I'm Thomas Etterling, your host of this seminar that reviews the scholarly peer-reviewed article, Failures in Communication Through Documents and Documentation Across the Perioperative Pathway by authors Sandra Bath, Robin Riley, Elizabeth Manias, which was published in the Journal of Clinical Nursing in 2015. This article is directly related to our course material through the written word pathway. Much of our focus so far has been on the spoken communication in healthcare, and this article expands that to communication in the form of written documentation. Next, I'll briefly review this article's main findings. The journal article main findings are first, that perioperative healthcare workers are required to rely more on written documentation, that's written, printed, or electronic, at patient care transfer points, and less on verbal handoff communication. That myopic focus on documentation and inadequate communication has been shown to negatively impact patient care and patient outcomes, and is the leading contributing factor of sentinel events in Australia from 2002 to 2011. Second, important information that should be written in documentation found in the patient's chart is sometimes lacking in clarity, completeness, or is simply hard to find. And third, sufficient time to substantively review written documentation at perioperative patient handoff points is frequently inadequate and impairs communication effectiveness. With that understanding of the paper's focus, I evaluate the strength of the paper. The strengths included multi-pronged data collection from observation to forums, and also included ethical clarity with good disclosure and proper permissions obtained, and they had good documentation of references. Weakness included a geographic location. The study was only done in Melbourne, Australia, although it was at 3 different facilities, at 3 different hospitals across the city. Still is limited to one location, which could have some cultural impacts. Overall, I believe this to be an accurate study that should be aggregated with many similar studies and more locations for greater reliability. However, knowing that this article is competent, how does it relate to our class? These findings connect with our class readings in several ways. Culture. The role of time and culture impacts communication at perioperative patient handoff points. Patient charts must be fully assessed by several providers, often at the same time. Nurses, anesthesiologists, and doctors each need to read and understand chart information. The organizational culture may have much to do with how freely accessed and shared this information is in the few short minutes in the same pressure-packed time frame. And negative impacts of culture may be found in an organizational culture that prioritizes that speed at handoff or documentation over the depth of communication at that patient handoff point. Then, interpersonal communication skills of the individual nurse are important. Consider the use of questions. Nurses must collect certain information quickly, and closed-ended questions are appropriate for this kind of information gathering. Even between nurses, the use of open-ended questions to clarify or specify information in the chart is important and can add depth and context. Then, effective group membership. The nurse is a member of a small group of the perioperative team where individual contribution and participation in the group impacts group dynamics. Functional groups facilitate communication when individuals invest in themselves and develop themselves with the group values, and then they exhibit the group attributes. That's pretty much straight from our textbook. For the nurse, this means gaining knowledge and expertise equivalent with other staff, being supportive of the group as a whole, and making suggestions to help the group be successful. Trust is also very important. Communication is likely better at perioperative handoff points when nurses involved in handoff trust each other. Nurses who don't trust each other may be guarded with their information, which could limit the completeness of the patient's health picture. That doesn't mean they simply take each other's word for information that should be read from the chart with a blind trust, but they do trust each other enough to make verbal note of a patient info that may otherwise be missed, and having the confidence that the other nurse will take the time to investigate and make considerations of that information. Respect as a building block of trust is one of my final legs. Often, perioperative teams are consistently working with the same people and have built relationships over time with each other. Respect is a foundation of trust, and specific trust should exist between perioperative nurses and circulating nurses, as this is the point and the relationship where the patient handoff happens most frequently on perioperative teams. Thank you for watching this review. Discussion of this review will be facilitated in the discussion forum for this assignment. I look forward to meeting with you there.